Guys sagen that I have a question. I also want to answer, but mainly a question. And my question is, if we should be happy that we got the Torah. It's Arbet? Drei Saus?
Yeah, it's Arbet.
Which means, or another question, the way to say it in the from language would be why we should be happy. But the non-from language for the same thing is if we should be happy. Because we had this Yom Tov called Zman Matan Teresaini, and supposedly the Olam was happy because they received the Torah. Now I'm not so sure. Man, let's be real. What's this pretending? Right? Because they pretend. So going besser unter Torah, nein?
They look that we're happy.
I don't know, we make a whole Yom Tov mit Naam Bekil Am Moide Divin Naam Lechem, mit Naam Torahs. The Masse, be real. So going besser mit them or doing them?
Well, it's a Torah.
I want.
But they're not happy.
What?
But they're not happy.
It doesn't seem like they're happy.
Right.
I once had a Sifa Shviz by night in my house. I see it.
What do you mean? They get to sleep the whole day. They don't have to take care of their kids the whole first day Shavuos. What are you talking about? It's a moment. It's epic time.
I said it's like, you know, yeah, shut. You don't have to drive the kids anymore.
And Eretz Yisrael, by the way, Yom Tov is over, bro. Right after Shacharis, it's over. Whatever, okay.
It's a good question, no?
Yeah, okay.
Serious question. We're adults. We're allowed to ask normal questions. Ich weiß, es medrisch tun, ich not alle pretenden, but that's why we come here. Seems to me that the Torah is a source of problems, not a source of solutions, right? I mean, how do we mekayim? Okay, so it's a problem. After you mekayim, the shal is how? Then you're not happy. I once had a Sifa and Shviz by night in my house. And I told everyone that everyone knows the story that the Eibishter brought the Torah to all the goyim, and everyone said there's one thing that's a deal breaker, right?
Right.
Can't have that. Right. So I said, imagine if they come to you, could you think of one thing that you would say no because of it?
Of course.
I got a big list.
Yeah.
Einfach, nimm das nicht heraus, then we'll be fine. Okay? Why do you right? And the Hamas that we said, nah, so finish, otherwise we wouldn't have gotten it either, right? That's the trick. Because there's real stuff, real talk.
In other words, like, they're like chassidim. They're like, yeah. That's what you mean?
They said, nah, so finish, but they didn't want to hear. Okay. If they would have...
violated.
I heard once that Episode Slanta said, Hamas, if they would have told them from Lishon Hara, we would have never gotten the Torah.
Yeah, that's basically the
white collar crimes too.
Yeah. Listen up. Only do it when nobody sees. Okay.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a serious question. I think it's a serious question. Maskam's a serious question. I told this question to my daughter. She said, "No, Tati, jetzt so, aber Taka." That's. So everyone thinks that's already an answer. Maybe there's no answer. You look at it.
It's on internet sheet. You want that? The
What? Explain.
That if you would just allow yourself just to be like, just always able to do everything, right? You're just like the internet, which is just you're available for everything and anything at any time, and nothing to mold you to a specific thing, right? And then you just that's not a life. So the Torah is like this thing that hones you in, like, you know.
So you're saying that Baruch Hashem, there's a thing.
Correct.
In other words, you're interpreting my question as the question which most people think, like the guy in what's his name's book said, without a God, everything would be permitted. And you're coming to say, and that seems like most Yidden, when I tell them this question, they're interpreting what's the other side? Like what would have happened if there would not be a Torah? And the answer that most from people think would be is that everything would be permitted.
Right.
And or something like we would be able to do what I could give you the exact language. We would be able to do whatever we wanted.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We'd be wild, right? We'd be wild.
That's the outcome of being able to do whatever you want. It doesn't have to be the outcome.
No, it's
cyber.
telling somebody, meaning somebody who has the Torah, ask him, right? What would you do? It'd be wild. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what they would say, right? Not thinking of.
Right, and
alternative to that.
I asked a very broad way.
There's an alternative to that too, but no one would think of that.
I asked a very broad question, so you give a certain interpretation of the question,
right?
Which is probably what most people, at least in some way, think, and then you give an answer to that interpretation.
I don't mean because everything would be mutter. It's not really what I'm saying. I think it's just the toilet.
You'd be free to do whatever you want.
No, it's a way of it's the mold of this chaymer, meaning you're just a blob, right? And in order to make you, let's say, into a table or into a something, right, and not just to be.
But this blob is a name for free will, right? For being able to do whatever you want. That's what we mean when we say that, right? That's the nothing, or what some people think is everything, right? This like being able to choose whatever I want, or to want whatever I want, or to do whatever I want. That's basically what it is. Or you have a different shot of what it is, because that's what I thought it was also.
But that's only if you interpret that the Torah is very restrictive. Right?
I don't know if it needs to make your life. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if it needs to be restrictive. It's just telling you what the good way is to be.
A way. It's not all of them. It's one of them, right?
Okay. Right.
Or at least not infinitely all of them. Maybe it's a lot of them, but not all of them.
Right. Meaning, let's say the Torah all said there's no lavin. Let's say, yeah.
Right.
Just do this and this and this and this. Let's say the goal is to be a computer scientist, right? So the Torah would say just do this and this and this and this and this, and then you become a computer scientist. Okay, so now you mold it into a computer scientist, right? That's a good thing. In other words, that's the goal, right? Versus not having anything, and then you just one day you're on the couch, the next day you're on the beach, the next day you're playing guitar, right? And you're just nothing ever, because you're able to be everything. So you're nothing. That's all I'm trying to say. But Taka doesn't have to be the Torah for that reason. That could have been right.
Very good. So that would be a good argument for something, a something. It's not a very good argument for this specific something. Not an argument. Doesn't tell us anything. Like I could still say, well, it becomes harder to say a little bit, but I could still say something like, I could still have certain criticisms of specific things, like say, I don't actually have an answer for this question, but I could say something like, did we need this thing about about being the best, about having about not marrying wherever you want, only people from a specific, how do you call it, tribe. Maybe that's just the cause of most of our problems. It's also machlokas of Terais, maybe we should have ourselves to blame for that. But anyways, yeah, like, in other words, all the particular things, or maybe even if someone says, well, you need certain particular things, we might not be happy with specific things. Maybe there are some things that are bad. Maybe there are some parts of, maybe there are some parts of the Torah that cause us problems and are the source of issues. And we should be sad about them. Or at least we should look for solutions. Are you so happy about it? By the way, I don't know. I don't have an answer to this question. I think that there are parts in the Torah that are bad for us, as far as I can tell. And to say that it would have been better to have a different one, that was a comparative question. Like, is there a different one that's better? That you have to weigh all the options. But at least that's not. I don't think that's really the question we should ask. question we should ask, is it true that everything the Torah, and the Torah means something very broad here, right? The whole Messiah and everything, right? Maybe it's only a minig, if you include all of that, there's definitely some parts of it that are not helpful, that are even the opposite of helpful. Like? Everyone should think of their example. You want me to tell you my problems?
No, tell me a problem that is like a universal problem.
There's no universal problem. I mean, universal problems, yeah. Like, for example, with something that I think is a problem, is this thing with being so special. I think that Atav Chatuni is a big problem. I'm not saying it's not true, but I said that it's a big problem that leads to some very bad midas, which are not helpful. Right. Bad mid gava is not a good midah, and gava about being a yid doesn't make it better. At least not when it's overdone. Maybe we have a shalef, mid-derech hamtzui, maybe there's a mid-aberenis of gava. Okay, some pride is important. I think it's true. I don't think a person could live without some pride, including pride in his people or so on. But I think that too much of it is definitely horrible and leads to very bad results. And therefore, and since this is something very integral to Yiddishkeit, it's very hard to imagine Yiddishkeit without it. It's not like something that you could try. Many people have tried to refine it, explain it better, but it's at least a challenge for almost everyone, for everyone basically. Besides for people to just embrace it, like we should take any bad midah if it says in the Torah, if we could have an excuse for the Torah for it. But that's something that's a problem, and it actually causes us many problems. Like half of the problems we have with other nations is just because of our bad midas. When we have to be real, right? The anti-Semitism, half of it, not a whole. I have certain a Rebbe told me, half of anti-Semitism is the guy's fault, but the other half is the Eden's fault.
So 1 second. So
I don't know why am I saying this.
Is it the Torah's fault or
cut it out of the video? Okay, then we get it. I'm not this. I don't want. Okay, I'm gonna. Right. First, soon in a minute, we're gonna talk about this.
It's like.
Is the Torah? That's what I said. When I say Torah, when I say the word Torah,
that to show that God is not great because all the things whatever. Right.
Now, and so I think very good. I'm talking about this. No, I don't think it's not at all.
What do you mean?
I actually think that argument is the correct argument, and we should take it seriously.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Because
I don't know that argument, so.
Okay, I know what he means. Now, it doesn't matter. Let's talk. It doesn't matter. This is not Mar Mekoimes, right? This sheet is not about Mar Mekoimes. We don't have to know anything. No prerequisites. Only after discussing. Why am I? But I should stop saying this sheet. It's going to cause me issues. No, let's say it's very, very clear then correctly. Well, we started with a question. Question is, should we be happy that we have the Torah? Or why are we happy? More for them a way of asking the same question. Now, we have to refine the question a little bit. We discussed, because this is like very general, most of what we can do really is to refine questions. Right? One way of talking, what Ari talked about was, does this mean like this funny imagination that most frum people have, and maybe most people have in general in regards to like their little, whatever culture they have, is like without this, I would have been more free. I would have been able to do whatever I wanted. And the answer to that, I think, is relatively trivial. Firstly, you wouldn't be able to do whatever you wanted because you don't know what you want. That goes back to a different sheet where what you want is not a good source for anything. And secondly, it's not good to do whatever you want. It's another word for doing nothing. Okay. Now those are very good points. Very good. So we're not really talking about, but I said that's easy mode, right? Because instead of asking a specific question, which was the question we started with, which is why we, people in Lakewood, in YouTube, in 2025, should be happy, or should we be happy with having received the Torah? You're asking a general question. Should human beings have a culture? Should we have laws? Of course the answer is yes. Should we have tradition? That's a more complicated question. We can get to that. But really it's not a chachma to say easy questions, right? We should ask the hard questions, which is, should Yitzchok Lowy be happy that he has this Torah, which includes all of these books, right? Now we have to refine that question a little more, and I think it's also a key for a solution. It's not only making the problem, but I think it's important. Then we can split this question also into a bunch of questions. In other words, we can split it at least into two questions. One is like the question that most people think that they're asked when they ask this question, and they get defensive about it. I also am getting defensive about it, right? Which is, being defensive is auch das schlechte Mittel, depending in which context. But the question is, like there's this ideology, belief, something like that, which we like believe in. The Torah, like you say, the Torah with the capital D and capital T, and it's questions on it, like the Heilige Torah that was Eivish of the game Bahar Sinai. Are you happy with it? Is it good? Right? Almost the same question, right? And of course, the answer has to be that it's good. We're not even allowed to ask that question, or at least we don't allow ourselves to ask that question. And I also think it's a less relevant question. And then we could sort of say like this. Let's say if that would be the question, then we can have this question, this difference between, how does it go? Love Judaism and not the Jews. Or like the Christians say, love Christ and not the Christians. Or like that, let's say I don't have a problem with Christ, only with his fan club. Right? That would be like an answer, right? That's a good answer for people that think that the primary question is to defend some ideal of the Torah, capital the, and or the whatever thing he believes in. And since there's some people that, like 99% of the apples give a bad name to the other 1%, so he's worried about the bad name of this headline thing. So he's going to justify it, he's going to make apologies for it, he's going to say, some Yid that's bad. Yeah, but that's not Yiddishkeit that made him bad. The Yiddishkeit was trying to make him good. He is bad, he's a bad Yid. Right? Same joke, right? Now what's the problem with this argument?
Is that a true Scotsman argument?
Sort of. What's the problem with this argument? What's the problem that I have with this argument? Or if some people...
How do we know it didn't make you that way?
No problem. Maybe it did. And of course there's ways in which it did. But I think I have a bigger problem with this argument, which is that I don't care about this headline. I am not here. I don't think anyone should care. When I say I don't care, I think you should not care. You should not care about the banner that says Judaism, that's like all the banners, that just should be good. Who cares? What's happening from them? What are we going to gain out of having that banner be right? Okay, there's like Emunah. People think that Emunah means to be a big fan of that banner and to make sure that it doesn't get sullied by any arguments or anything. But I don't see how that's useful to anyone. It's a question of covered. I don't know what it's a question of. It doesn't seem to be useful. That's not a question you should be asking. You should never be asking if this headline thing called Yiddishkeit or Torah or whatever it is that you're defending is good or bad. Why would anyone... To whose life is this question relevant? Only to people who are having fights on YouTube. But other than that, L'man Afkebena.
Can I just say one thing? Like, are you also saying? I know you're not saying these words, but are you also saying like Lamazog? The title was the Susalam Tesayfre, right? All these bad in this Lamasa wouldn't come out. Is that like a shekol?
No, what I'm saying is, even imagine you could have, if you would convince me, okay, that all the bad. Now maybe there's a mitzvah like to convince yourself of that, but it's not the question that I care about. You convince me that all the bad things that you find in, let's say someone would be like a Karawi style argument, right? So there's a bunch of bad things that we assume are bad. Again, we can discuss if they're bad or not, but we're just assuming. There's a bunch of bad things in religion so-and-so, in state so-and-so, in group so-and-so. And now, I have a problem. This is a bad group, because they're full of bad things. So comes someone and says, look, I have a teretz for you. This group, they're not really about what they're doing. They're really about this book that they claim to believe in, which nobody really opens or cares what it says. Nobody in that group cares. But suddenly we care, right? Doesn't make any sense. And that book is really very high. It just happens to be there's a lot of mefarshim on that book that are bad. So, but you should really hold of this book because it's only the commentaries that are bad, but the book itself is good and says only good things. And I'm going to answer this guy, why in the world should I care about what these people claim to be about? I don't care about what they claim to be about. I care what we're actually about. Now, this is a bad group of people. People seem to keep on getting confused, right? Is Islam a problem? I don't care if the Quran is a good book or a bad book. I've read it and it's not. I've read it that I'm not really. Also, I've read it and it's not the point. But I don't care. That's not the discussion. These chavre, they seem to want to kill me, so I'm not a fan of them. That's all. Whether it's from this book, from that book, maybe it's a practical thing. Could we convince them that the book is wrong? It makes no difference to my life. And people get stuck with this, because if we could prove that their book is bad, that helps me somehow. But if someone says, someone comes and says, that really the book was great, just there was someone else that corrupted it. Okay, and now what? What should I do with this information? There's nothing, I can't do anything with it.
Okay, but it's always a question of what the argument originally was. If the argument is God's not good.
I am.
Right? The Torah is not
So wait,
good.
first we're talking. I'm not talking about God being good. This is not a sheet in theodicy.
whatever.
Same thing. I don't think that when the Torah. Very good. So if you're interested in defending some God or something like that, because we already believe that God gave it and he must be good or something like that, that would be interested in that question. Maybe I'm not interested in that question.
To do with this because the group of people you can say has nothing to do with God, even though let's say even God gave the Torah, you could say. You could talk.
Well, the problem with God is that makes things complicated. But I'm just first thing that I'm not interested in that question, because if there's a question of justifying the God that supposedly gave this Torah, then I don't even think that would answer the question for him. But that's another point. Because if he's God, he should know how it's going to be interpreted. My greatest God was not responsible for his own Torah. Man, be real. That's no point of such a God, right? There's no point in such a defense of God. Maybe there's a point. No point in such a defense of God which says, look, God gave a good Torah, people ruined it. Okay, so then you're claiming that I should respect this God. I should have honor, respect, be happy with this smart Torah of this God. And then you tell me, well, it turns out it didn't really do anything good. It only did bad things. So I'm not happy with it. Does God blameless? No problem. So now God's blameless. So was was for me. I think that people right away tend to shift the conversation to the wrong question. The question that we want to know when we ask these questions is this good? When I asked you the question, should I be happy? I'm going to tell you what I meant with the question. I think that people get very easily confused. Both sides of the discussion get very easily confused with the question. When I come on Shvius and I'm a Shayakis and I say, should we be happy that we got the Torah? Right? I mean literally that. I mean this Yitzchok and this Torah. The one that actually exists amongst the actual people who are following it, who are teaching it and so on. I don't mean a different question, which is a very nice question. Like, I'm with you, it's a good question. Is the idea of the God that gave the Torah and had this plan, was it a good plan? Is he a good God? Is his Torah a good book? Those are nice questions, but they're not the question that I asked. And I don't think I meant to ask them. And we shift, like we keep on noticing this, right? People always shift questions that you ask as if you meant something else. And if you actually remain very tmimistic and you say, well, try to think what you really wanted to know, you'll notice that you never wanted to know that question. Same thing, like I said, it's easier to think about. Nobody cared if Christianity is the cause of the Crusades or not. If these Chevra with the Crusades, we don't like them. Chevra that do other things, we do like them. So now, is there a question of why is this like abstract question so interesting? It's not so interesting. It's of course interesting, for political reasons, but the question that I'm asking is not that question. And I think that if there would be such a Torah which is in itself somehow we could know that it's very good, that all these apologetics are true, this ideal is great, but all the people that follow it are somehow bad, I say that you should be a koyfer in that Torah, and you should disregard all the teritzim, because it's not relevant. And vice versa. I think that if there's a Torah that's bad, theoretically, but somehow causes all the people to be good, now of course this is complicated, because how do you know what's good and bad? Okay, but imagine that this would be possible, I think there's at least a very serious side that you should become part of that group. Because it seems to be doing good for them. Who cares if they're imagine there would be like a text that everyone agrees that originally was just about murder and rape, and somehow the Mefarshim of the Hezbollah came and said, no, it's about being a good guy and giving tzedakah. So we should become part of that group. Who cares what really the Pshita Shamikra was?
Well, that's only if Lamaisa that group.
If it works, if it works. Because that's the much more interesting question. When I ask about the Torah, I don't ask about it's not a science question, right? It's a question about ethics. It's a question about the good. Torah is a system of how to live. It's not a system of telling us a story that happened, whether the actual story of Mamdar Sina or some truths about God. Those are totally separate questions. We're asking about certain ways of living. Now, if these are a good way of living, then that's all. Also steht in the Piet, it says in the Piet, I make things very simple. If it's intertwined, then you should do tshuva until it becomes simple. Very simple. Not pashut. I don't believe in the Torah as an abstract thing. I think the question that's interesting is the one of the actual one, which exists in the people, not in the book.
I don't understand something. Why can't you say abstractly whatever really is the Torah is like it's a and mention corrupted? What type of God is that God that didn't know? What do you mean? What type of God is the God that gives you bechira to screw everything up?
By the way.
Yeah.
Useless.
What?
Useless. Yeah, you're just used to the teretz.
No, I'm asking you. Is that the question? Is that your question? That we shouldn't have bechira?
No. That was just a throwaway argument. Delete that from the record. That was not interesting about.
From the record. So now, yeah. So
the interesting thing is that I don't think that this question is a distraction. You're confusing me. Like many people who are good at debates, they're big kishrin, but they do sleight of hand. instead of answering your question, they make you think that you answer a different question, and they have a good answer on that question, and they answer it. Like media training, right? Answer the question you wanted to be asked, not the one you asked. Okay. I think that when I ask the question, should I be happy with the Torah, which is sort of the same question, should I follow it, right? If it's good, I'm happy with it, I'll follow it, right? If it's not good, I won't follow it. Yeah, the question I want to know... No. Okay, wait.
I'm not following the people.
Okay. I don't believe in the concept of a Torah existing with other people.
But it does.
No, it does not. No, it does not. Does not. Okay. Hello, you're pushing away the thing.
99% of the people made mistakes. Fine. I mean,
no. So listen to me. Wait. You're jumping around. I say that it's distraction. People distracted by saying, okay, but the book is so good. I have news for you. If none of the people that are good, then I have nothing to do with the book. I don't care about the book. That's what I say is the question that I actually wanted to know. Okay? Now, if you want to tell me that you have a secret way, listen to what I listen.
All the people are
because the word Torah doesn't mean a book. If anyone told you Torah is a book, they're a pekursim. It's in the Gemara. If someone says Torah is a book, nizrike by meanness. The Torah is not a book. The Torah is people that do it. Hanik Torah is shebal peh. Lish that in the Gemara was kiddush. Nyane Amelech never made a mistake. He said Torah is a book. Anyone that wants to read it should read it. I'm a bad guy, but who cares? I killed all the chumim, but there's still the book. So the Gemara nizrike by meanness. That's a Gemara. But why? Because the Torah doesn't work. The Torah is not a book. And maybe there's a book called the Torah, and maybe God gave that book, and maybe you could defend it as a very nice book. But no, there's no such a thing. That's not what we mean to say when we say Torah, or when we ask, oh, should be happy with the Torah. We don't mean, is that a good book? Now, you came up with a nice idea, which is, okay, maskim, but maybe I could be the first one to follow that book, which is a good book according to the apologetics, which switched the question, and I'll be a good person by following the book. Okay, that's what you're saying, maskim.
Then why did God give such a
wait, forget about the questions on God. We're not worrying about God. He's worrying about Him.
No, but then it's such a confusing.
That's a kash on Hashem. That's a kash on God, but we're not interested in justifying God. We're interested in finding a good way to live. So you're asking that even though all the people, or assuming that the people that are actually teaching this book, right? You have to remember, when I say people following it, I don't mean just following, maybe people teaching it, right? People teaching the book don't understand it. Mr. Ari got on the edge to us, and since those people themselves are more that the book is better than them, right? Obviously, that's what everyone that believes in the Torah says, that the book is better than them in some sense. I'm going to be following the book and not them, right? Be a Talmud of the Torah, not of the Lomdei Torah. So that's another version of Karuas, right? You noticed, right? You just reinvented Karaism, right? And so that's not an argument. That's just me making fun of you. But the problem with this is that I don't actually believe that this works. I mean, it might work in a very limited way, but even in the sense that it works, it only works in the sense that you do find one person they think is a good person. If you say, like you say, the Rambam said that 99% of people don't understand, so you're a kust of the Rambam. So Grade is there, decline a problem. I didn't say you have to have a live person. So you're not part of the Yiddishkeit of Lakewood. You're part of a new Yiddishkeit, or an old one called Rambam, or anyone, whatever it is, your old book they decided is good. And you're trying to be a student of this person. It's quite hard to be a student of that person. It's possible somewhat, that's limited, in limited ways it's possible. You might be able to do that. But just to go back to the question, that's not the question that I asked, right? That's again not going to satisfy me, because when I say should I be happy with the Torah, I mean the one I was taught, right? I don't mean one that I could invent, because I found a good book that seems to be a good book, and there's no people that actually follow it, or maybe very few, but I'm in Chus of that book. I have tons of good books for you. Get the books. It's so easy to write a good book. No, it's not mamish easy. Okay, I'm exaggerating. But there's 5 good books, okay? Not only one. We have to be real. The Torah, even according to the Rambam, it's not the only good book, okay? Someone tells you it's the only good book, the Cholaming. Maybe they just didn't read any other good books. Which is, I'm not saying there's not many other good books. Maybe there's 5. I think it's very hard to write like a world historical good book. It's not simple, right? In reality, how many books are there that have a million people following them? Maybe 5, right? Okay, 12 if you count. A number less than 20, I think. Okay, but I'm pretty sure all of them are as good as the Torah in the same way. I'm not that I know. I'm making this argument not out of knowledge. I'm just. But the most important thing is
good. In what way good?
Okay, I didn't say. I pretend in this whole discussion that we know what is good and we can decide if the good book is good. Of course. Otherwise, nothing works, right? If we can't decide what is good, then we don't have anywhere to start with, anyways. Of course, we have to do that, but that's the important question. Of course, that's a big question. No, I didn't solve that at all. If you just define good as whatever that book says, then again we're stuck in a loop. That doesn't help us. We can't be happy with it either, right? We can only be happy because it's a mitzvah. The Torah says you should be happy, so you should be happy with it. But that's just circular, right? That's just the Rebbe got the Lowy, so you must have the Lowy, right? You should believe that the Torah is good because it says in the Torah is good. Which is what you'll hear in Lakewood Yeshiva, but it's so funny that people keep repeating circular arguments and don't realize it. I have a way to justify them, but I'm just saying it doesn't help me, right? Well, are we happy to receive the Torah? What do you mean the Gleibst in the Torah is good? What do you want from my life? Did I ask you if I should have a Torah? If it's good, obviously I have to be outside to talk about this question, right? Otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Okay. And Shoin saw some Misham asking about me? No. Anyways. And you have to be talking about the actual Torah, the actual one. I actually think Lamushlam, someone that I'm saying this in the argument, but I don't actually have a way out of it. I think that someone who, if we agree that there's some bad ways, right? Assuming, I think that everyone agrees this. Now this is just to justify myself, because I said before that there's this other conversation, which is if the Torah is good or if God is good, and we of course have to at least say that God is good and the Torah is good. But it's also not controversial at all to say that there are bad ways to learn the Torah, right? Like it says in the Gemara, or Yeshti Talmidim, Ma'im Eruim. There's all kind of ways to understand the Torah Leminis. I mean, it's basically accepted in Chazal that Christianity is a bad version of the Torah, right? They don't say it's bad; they say it's a bad version of the Torah, right? It's bad interpretation. And something comes out of the Torah, but in the wrong way somehow. Whose fault is it? Good question, right? But it's a very much traditionally accepted. There's nothing controversial. Like I say this, I try to make this controversial, this discussion, but really it's not controversial at all. It's very accepted. It's Kala all the shit is Armaskim that you could have, that's theoretically possible. There should be people who should go around saying, we are committed to the Torah, we're Torah people, and they should be horribly bad people. Nobody should want to be like them. Even the Torah itself is against them, but it's true that they came from the Torah, right? And now I have a question for you. Someone that grew up in that group, okay? Everyone should imagine whichever group he's thinking of, okay? And then he got zeichel, right, like a Vrumavini. He started asking you the right questions. I guess, of course, it's a fantasy. It doesn't really work like this. But let's say, really, he got molested by his teacher over there. But let's say there could be like this pure version of a Vrumavini. And by the way, that's bad. That's a reason. You get what I'm saying, right? Yeah. That's correct. That's the real. But anyway, let's say he figures out that this is wrong, right? Because it's not good to molest people. So he becomes a goy, right? And also will come and tell him, what do you mean? Your Rebbe, the Shaygit, he doesn't represent the whole Torah. He had a wrong shot in the Torah. Therefore, come to us, or you're stupid for becoming a goy because you realize that the Skver Rebbe is not such a tzaddik. Skver Rebbe himself doesn't pretend to be Moshe Rabbeinu. He is also moide that the Torah is above him. Not actually moide, by the way, but we pretend that he is. And not only he's right, but right, and therefore you're very dumb if you make that conclusion, right? That's what we like to say. I think that argument is absolutely wrong, because there is no Torah besides for the one that actually gets taught in Talmud Torah. And it says in the Medrash, right? Everyone knows the Medrash of Purim, that the Torah came to the Eibush. It says in the Piyut of Torah Gdosha that someone printed into a Machzor for Shviyah, so I sang it yesterday, that the Torah said that the Rebbeinu Shalom im Ein Yisroel ein Torah. Right? What do you mean ein Torah? In Himmel. No use, right? The Torah only exists to the extent that people read it and mekayim it and do it, okay? And therefore, if there's a version of Torah which is bad, then whoever converts out of it is right, and there isn't any argument against it. He's not making a mistake. It could be that you could propose to him, now that you got out of that, no problem, because the guy is lost, so you're helping him. I'm not saying you shouldn't help him in that way. But I'm just saying that the argument that says that he's stupid is wrong. He is right. And I said, I think it's vice versa true. If someone comes to me, and I know people that come and say this, right? I don't know if the Torah is true. It seems to me that whatever I was taught is good way to live. And people think that this is cynical. They call it orthoprax or something like that. Turns out that this is the truth. Right? And that's not really what the people say. But if they would say something like this, I think that they mean to say it, so I'm getting at. But if someone would come and say, I have no idea, be real, all these stories, but I'm happy. My father seemed to be a good guy. My teachers seem to be good people. I don't know if there's other ways to be a good person, but this is a good way of being a good person. I'm happy with it. I want my children to be good people in the same way, right? And therefore, I want to accept this version of way of life, I think that person made the correct choice and the justified choice, right? The wise choice. Wisdom in the sense of doing the correct actions based on the correct reasons, for the correct reasons. He has no idea if Muhammad Hasina happened, so what? That was never the question. His father's thing is based on that. Okay, so we'll say the same story also. No problem. If it's based on that, we'll believe in it also. To be good people. This is the argument that I make based on my question, right? I didn't answer the question yet. I just assuming that that's just because of me saying that that's the correct question. Turns out that it's very important to be good people. People keep on jumping way out of this and saying, I don't have to be a good person because I believe right in the Torah I have this banner behind me who is good. Useless. If you're a bad guy, your children should become goyim, even if you have this banner. It doesn't save you. I think how many people sort of rely on that.
And they do. Right?
And their children become goyim. And like I saw this discussion, I was thinking about this. People were having this machlokas. What kept Yiddishkeit? The one is Baal Shem Tov, and the other is Dafka, the nicht Baal Shem Tov, and the third is this.
So the Torah protects itself.
Protects itself by...
become goyim.
Well, if you care about the Torah protecting itself, but I care about people being good people. And everyone was saying something else. Like the question was about like which theory saved the Torah, right? Is it the rationalist theory or the mystical theory? And I'm looking at these people. You people are living in the Olam Halala land. You think that everything is about theories that you could defend in debate and Chayde. It's nonsense. What really keeps the Torah is people being good people by it. And I think when people say, oh, before the Baal Shem Tov, Yiddishkeit was going down, and Baal Shem Tov saved it, all that means is that Baal Shem Tov was a sincere person who tried to be good using the Torah. And according to the mythology, the Chassidim like to tell themselves that everyone before that were somewhat corrupt. Which just means they use the Torah for themselves, and instead of trying to become good people and teach their children. Of course, you shouldn't. You should become a goy if that's the case. I actually think this is true. Any area where you see where the teachers of the Torah are sincere, they could be stupid. They could be wrong. That's not the point. If they're sincere, they're trying to become better people using the Torah. Their children are stay Yiddish. The people who are very obviously not sincere, and sometimes not even having a problem because they think that the excuse of having the correct eminence saves them, their children become goy. Look around. It could be that you need a good theory for that. Like, if people can't believe in the Torah without Chassidus, then you need Chassidus in order to be able to be a good person using the Torah. Because otherwise you think that the Torah is taka bad. So you can't become a good person using it. But the thing that makes people good is only the good people, not the theories.
Like that's the whole idea of Ishbis the whole time, right? That's what you're saying? Like,
I don't know what is the idea.
Jede schlechte Sache in the Torah, right? That like you're scared that someone's gonna maybe become like bad from it. He somehow like makes it not as good. It really means
Maybe.
this.
Maybe. I don't know. It doesn't work. I don't know.
Basically, ik word na goy met de goyshaft,
Who?
like ik heb Yiddishkeit. Understand?
I'm not sure what you mean, but I feel like it's going to get on me to a whole complication if I start talking about it.
Oh, it's very simple. Lemaisa.
Oh, so I didn't answer my question. I just said what the question is. No. I didn't understand. I didn't understand. It was one.
Yeah, because like the generations before, they kept the Torah, right?
Right.
They said, this is the Torah says. The Torah says do all these like you know, that's like Schmidd's thing or whatever, right? And they have the Torah to back them, right? So the Maasat made a bad society, yeah? You came and see this and go, I was off from Baratzen, I got Kurim, right. This is this, yeah? So basically, from Yene Yiddishkeit to Beis HaGoy. So I'm saying, so Gemara Goyim Take, and that's what kept Yiddishkeit going. So that Gemara Goyim,
according to no problem. Okay, you could say that.
They do it.
Of course it's not a Goy, Chaz V'shon.
But,
Yeah, ich am asking. Okay, I hear. If that's what you meant to say, I'm asking. Now, the question is, I'm not saying that any of these solutions are the correct solutions or anything. I'm just saying what kind of thing it is. What kind of question the question is. Yeah. Now, given that this is the correct question, we should think of what the answer is. Wouldn't that be complicated? So, what do I think? What do you think? It turns out I made my job very hard now because all the people listen to my classes, not all of them have the same background as me, and some of them maybe have a bad background, and I'm telling them to become goyim. Shach Hamas is this shit, right? Yeah, hello. Okay, so I have a shtickle answer. I actually also think that this answer is used. I also have an answer to that question, but we have to say what I think the answer is. You missed the whole.
I missed everything? Oh, I wanted to come in.
Now we're going to say the teretz.
It's hard to start with the teretz. It's always hard. It's good for a challenge.
Right. So, the teretz is... What's the teretz, Rabbi Shalom? I can't get into the actual teretz maybe, but I could say what kind of teretz there could be, right? Kind of teretz could be goes back to what we discussed about virtue, right? This was all I'm meant to get back to our singya, of course, right? We're not getting about anything else, right? And we learned that there's something called virtues, and it's very hard to find a good translation for it, and even in English, virtue is just a Latin word that translates a Greek word, which means arete, which means something like excellence. And in Judaism, people call it midot tovot, but it's a apparently bad translation, although it's like has something going for it. It's traditional, but it's not actually good for defining what it is. Because midah just means a measure, and this is just the reason we call it midah was just based, I think, on the Rambam's theory of midah, Aristotle's theory of virtues being measures in between. And midat tovah just means the correct measure, but it does think of what, like it's not saying what the point of that is.
The term midat tovah came from that Greek
word? I think so. Not from the Greek word. It came from the translators, like from the Rambam. The Rambam already used the word midah, although he called it book Hilchas Dayas because it's the midah of the Dayas. It's not Hilchas Midas. But he uses the word term midah in Perish HaMishnah, and it's from Chazal. Chazal used the word midah, and possibly for the kind of thing that the Greeks called virtues. I can't deny that interpretation. Chazal used the word midah in the sense of measure, but in the broad sense of measure, like in this broad sense of measuring anything, like arba midas, pital midah, midah toiva meriba, things like that. It literally means measure, but it means like the measure of a certain way of acting. So something very close to what we call virtues. And it was used by the Rambam and then its translators for virtues more generally. But it doesn't help us to explain what it is. The important thing to understand, or the thing that we're struggling to understand right now there's something about it that we could say, right? Something about it that we could say, and this is connected to what I'm saying. Something about it which we could say, which has to do with the question of how to get midas tovos, right? How to get virtues, right? Now, we said that virtue is liking. A virtue is a like. Okay, your character virtue, at least there's other virtues, intellectual virtues, which are not like that exactly. But character virtues are likes and dislikes, which is a way of saying the love or the liking of a specific activity, right? Not of a specific thing, but of a specific activity. Like, for example, if you go to yeshiva and they teach you to learn, what they teach you is not to learn, they teach you to like learning. All the yeshiva I'm asking with this. Right? They think they teach you to know how to learn, that's intellectual virtue. But I'm talking about the character virtue, Shabbat. It's the midah of liking to learn. Okay? And interestingly, anyone that went through a yeshiva system, Litvish yeshiva system, that was successful at him, nowadays not all of them are successful, or maybe never they were all successful. But for the most part, like a successful product of a Litvish yeshiva system, bad word. A successful product of a Litvish yeshiva loves to learn. No matter if he's a guy, if he's a yid, if he keeps Shabbos or not, there's all these chassidish stories that are supposed to make fun of this, saying, there's a guy that used to learn with the tzigrat on Shabbos. But that just shows that they were successful, right? That was their goal, to make you like learning, and they were successful at it. Because liking means that you like it. It doesn't mean that you do a mitzvah. L'shem mitzvah, like we discussed. L'shem mitzvah is the opposite of liking. Right? The chassidim, by the way, they have the same thing. They just teach you to like singing Menicha v'Simcha, and there's people that did that with the tzigrat on Shabbos. The zel b'choyzik kamamach, and Litvak's actually make choyzik. But it's actually, the whole machlokas is very dumb, because this machlokas all gets conducted as if the main thing is some kind of Kabbalah soil, right? And then everyone is arguing if you have the correct one. But the reality of chinuch is that it doesn't work with Kabbalah soil. The reality of chinuch for virtues is that it teaches you to love certain things. Now the machlokas is really which virtues are more important, if singing Menich Simcha or liking to learn. That's a fair discussion. It doesn't get resolved by referring to how many people are don't have Yiras Shamayim and do it, right? Gets resolved by is this kind of person a better person or not? That's a serious question. I don't have the answer to it right now. I'm just trying to give the framework of what the question is. Right, so that's called training, that's called chinuch, that's called virtues. Now, what am I getting at here? That this becomes something a little hard to define. or a little hard for us. We are very used, since, like we discussed a minute ago, we are very used to jumping to the like intellectual level or the like dogmatic level of things. Like, should you learn Torah? And then we pretend that yeshivas teach you that you should, that there's a big Indian, it's an ideal to learn Torah. But that's not what they teach you. That everyone believes supposedly. That's not the point, or you do or you don't. Maybe they don't even believe it. What they actually teach you is the activity, not the activity, but the laikok of the activity, the habit, right? It's called the habit, the hobby, the love of this, being this kind of person. Right? Now that is not the same as the banner, what we call it, like the belief. Like, because like I said, there's many people that are like, right, all the people that write in the Ated, people that don't learn asachas, but they very much believe in the ideal of learning, right? Those are people for who the chinuch didn't work, right? The people that did work are the people that like to learn. But it's also not, it's very important to notice, right? We discussed this in the last class. It's also not the kind of like as liking orange juice, right?
It's liking the taste of orange juice.
Yeah, right. And people seem to confuse this because people, when they like, some people that they become reflective about this and they realize, I was taught this kind of activity to like this kind of thing, and then he asks himself, okay, so, and like even Baal Musar can get into this kind of discussion, right? Does this mean that I believe in it? Or does it mean that I just don't like it? As if these are the only two options. Like any guy that's like a stickle overklet or a stickle Baal Musar goes like, so I love to learn, but is that really because I really believe in it? I really mean it l'shem shamayim, or I stam like it, right? These are the two options. As if these are the only two options. But it turns out both of these options are wrong. Perhaps. Both of these options are useless. What?
The third option, which is another type of...
Yeah. That's the actual activity. It could be that itself is not enough. It could be that, but it's not. The dichotomy that we put it into is absolutely not wrong, because it's not what it does. It taught you a new kind of like. In other words, just like you have like an ability to like food or an ability to like other pleasures, now you have a new ability. You didn't have it before. To like learning. It doesn't reduce to, I like the cover to get out of it. No, just to be clear, it's not the same thing. The older people that, like the yeshiva successful products, they're not people that like to learn because they get covered out of it. They like to learn even when they don't get covered out of it, right? Lishma. Maybe it's not the Chassidish pshat of Lishma, which is also a theoretical thing. It's the Litvish pshat, the B'chai pshat of Lishma, right? Lishma, by the way, this is the Rambam pshat of Lishma also. At least one level of it. You like that thing. Why do I like it? Because I have this new thing, not because I'm a person that likes, like as if there's like three basic likes that we're born with, and now we can just connect things to that. Nonsense. You get new likes. There's new things that you like now. You're born with liking food and liking pleasure and liking attention. Very nice. Now you have a new thing you like to Torah. And it started off with connecting it to the lower pleasures, which is called Metach Shlo Lishma Bo Lishma. But it didn't end there, and just not a big level.
This was the lower pleasure.
Is
that stuff?
Yeah.
No, but I'm talking about like the taste of Torah, meaning.
I don't know. There's no such a thing. There's no such a thing. It doesn't taste like anything. What are you even saying when you say that?
Oh, I'll explain. Just like there's liking orange juice, and then there is liking the taste of orange juice, right? Right? You said this last Wednesday night.
Okay, let's assume that we're.
So there is liking learning, and then there is actually when you learn that.
No, I'm not masking. I'm not masking. When I said the taste of orange juice, I just meant the thing that is ke'ili built into you, right? The thing that is just sensitive pleasure. There is no sensitive pleasure in learning. There just isn't.
To say that you like the activity of drinking orange juice.
That would be different than the sensory pleasure of drinking.
Right, which is not very common. What do you like about
people have likes like that, I think. But
I just said the word orange juice.
No, I understand.
No, there's people that enjoy popcorning. Yeah? There's people that enjoy
Yes. No problem. But this does not exist at all for Torah. Just be clear, it does not exist. It doesn't.
Two things don't exist? Okay.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. The only way it can exist is in the way of Shaloi Lishma, which is as in you should come to Shul Shavuos by night because they give out cheesecake, which is like an artificial connection between the activity of learning and that. And you could do the learning not for itself, but for the purpose of kavod or for money or for the nash that you give. But let me finish my sentence. But that's the idea of Shtach Shaloi Lishma Bo Lishma, which is saying that because it's not actually because of that, the activity of learning doesn't very well connect to this knowledge that you get. If it would connect well, then you would be stuck, but it doesn't actually connect, but it's a separate activity, which means that it has its own goals. Right? And then, once you get into it, you notice those goals. Which is an important point that we're going to get to. You notice those goals. You notice that learning has its own goal. What is it? To understand the sugya well. Let's say. That's a goal that's entirely separate from getting the candy. Now you could work hard and you could like try to keep on remembering. I don't really care about learning the sugya well. I only care about getting the candy in the end. That's called the. That's not actually the natural situation. That's like where people begin, but it's not the natural situation of anyone that likes to learn. Anyone that likes to learn is because they like the good, which is inherent to learning itself.
Can you say that they like the feeling of learning?
No, because feeling is another thing that you pretend existed before. I don't know what the feeling of learning. The feeling of learning was neschadish when you were taught to learn. When you say the feeling, you're pretending that I don't know what feelings are. I know what sensory feelings are. Okay, no, sensory feelings, as in there's no sensory feeling in that. No, absolutely not. No, doesn't feel like anything. It feels like, it feels it's an analogous word use of the term feel. It feels like understanding a pshat. It doesn't feel like sweetness in your tongue or like whatever sensory pleasure in your nerves you have from other sensory pleasure. Just not. People like to pretend that it is, but it's not. I'm not just denying that it doesn't have some neurons firing in your brain or whatever that is. But that's still separate than what we call sensory pleasures. It's our other neurons, okay? Let's say it's also neurons. I'm not getting into materialism versus that. But it's other neurons, okay? Other nerves. And those nerves do not act, they're not the same ones. There's no shaykhis. You can't reduce it to I feel good. What does feeling good even mean? The feeling good of learning is a different kind of feeling good than the feeling good from drinking something sweet or getting drunk or whatever it is. And that is the feeling good that belongs to learning. This is what confused so many people when they started getting into pleasure of learning all these things. They're all just confusions for not understanding this. Yes, absolutely just confused.
You coming up with that. That's what I'm trying to be. That's exactly what I'm trying to.
Entirely confused because the Egletal thinks that lishma means something a third thing, which is closer. No. The Egletal thinks again. The Egletal doesn't have this middle category like most modern people because they forgot it because they stopped reading Aristotle. And since the university stopped reading Aristotle, the Yidden also stopped. And therefore, they forgot about the reality that the normal way of talking about these things is not to pretend that everything you like is just a kind of sensory pleasure, which is obviously not. So of course everyone knows that. So we pretend that these like psychological pleasures are somehow the same thing as sensory pleasures, right? And then since everyone religious or everyone part of a tradition still thinks that there's something higher than that, but you don't know of anything intermediate, so you jump to something very high. So the Chassidim jump to this idea of lishma, of dvaikis, of meaning God or something like that. Now, meaning God is a very nice ideal, but that's not what we're talking about over here. We're talking about something much simpler than that. Right? And the kind of pleasure that you have from learning is not sensory. No, but why would you even think that? It's a thing itself. Now, is that good? By the way, I didn't say that it's good to pursue for itself. I don't know if it's a good. The Gletal's question is a different question, or the question of is it good? Is it really the thing you should pursue? But I don't actually think Glal said something like this. No, to answer your question, it does not. It can't be distinct. The pleasure, the kind of pleasure, if we call this pleasure, if we call this liking, right? The liking of the learning is not separate from the learning in the same way that the liking of, like the first division that we made, like the liking of ice cream and the liking of eating ice cream. It's not.
Okay, that's all my question.
It doesn't separate in that way. Because the whole mahos of this thing is that now I installed you a new liking thing. That's all it means. Of course, there's an activity of learning. And maybe not always you like it. Maybe the like comes in the beginning and the end. That's already how it works. But the liking is the same thing that the Egletal does get this right? That the liking is part of the learning. It's not possible for someone to be a loymid, the midas loymid limit. You could be a mekayim mitzvah stamma torah, stamma frimah, then you're not a lamdan, right? Then the yeshiva's education failed on you. You're a tzadikul, you're not a loymid, right? You're the chavetz chaim. You never like learning. But if they succeed, then you like it. And this liking is not the same kind of pleasure. Well, if it's lishma, if God cares about this, that's a separate question. We have to ask that question. The Chassidim will definitely say that it's not enough. I'm not arguing with that. I'm just saying that it's not the same. When they criticize the Chassidim, they sometimes reduce it to the lower kind of pleasure, which it isn't. It can be criticized, but not in that way. Stimmt?
You're saying that if it would have been such a type of sensory pleasure, no one would have to teach you this type of liking?
Then all Torah that isn't that then again. I don't know if it wouldn't be a have to teach, but that's just not what it is. I don't know why anyone would think it's a sensory pleasure. It just isn't. Which sense is it?
So who cares what it's called? Sensory this, sensory that. I just know for myself, right? There's two different likings. There's one like before you go, like you get like a chaychik to go over, yeah. In other words, you like the activity of learning. In other words, right? Like 2 o'clock in the morning, get this chayshik to learn, let's say, or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever, right? You just go,
Psychological pleasure?
right? 1 second, and then when you learn,
these are details within the thing. I don't see that. There's a detail.
It's liking the activity of learning for the learning itself.
Some people like this. No, I don't think it's lenyuni. Doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me. It's an interesting discussion to have if we're talking about actually the virtue of learning. We'll get into all the different parts of it. But since I'm just trying to find what a virtue is, then all of those are in the same category to me. Right? Psychological pleasure, I don't know what that means. That's just a word that seems to make people think they know something.
Okay, I wanted to say something very, very simple because I want to understand this, okay? So like this, since I one time ate pizza, now I like pizza, okay? In other words, forget about the taste of pizza. At this point, I already like pizza eating, okay? Right?
It's magazine. I don't know.
Aber it's möglich. It's possible.
But we're not. We're not talking. We can't. No, not.
How do you understand that?
Again, I'm not.
How do you understand? I like pizza eating. What does that even mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that it's. I actually think that you're wrong because you're jumping within that. You're connecting them too much, right?
Because you don't eat.
You'll remember. Don't. Let's keep things simple. Listen. It's not it. Wait. So let's keep things very simple and never talk about the same thing which has both because that's just confusing us. Okay. We're going to use examples where it's clearly distinct. Okay. Eating and other physical pleasures are one kind of like, and kavod and gava and kas are another kind of like. Okay. It's as simple as that. Kavod doesn't mean I get a tingle in my spine or something. It just means I like that. Okay, it's a social thing. It exists somewhere. I'm not getting into the materialism thing question. It's just a different kind of thing. Okay, is masmas a different kind of thing? Very good. That's all. Now, torah is the kind of learning, is the kind of thing that kavod is, not the kind of thing that food is. That's all.
There's a third thing.
Not a third. Same.
There isn't a third thing?
It's a good, better one, but it's different. Same kind of thing. There's a third thing which is intellectual. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the virtue of learning.
Can you give 2 regular examples, let's say, of like gaiva and let's say, I don't know, the food thing, whatever, the pleasure thing?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Saying that once I feel COVID,
the big difference is, the generally big difference is that one is social, in other words it's taught, and the other one is more natural. Again, to use a simplified example, you don't have to be taught to like food, but you do have to be taught to like COVID. Everyone is taught that.
Because it has to do with the sensory pleasure?
Yes.
Whereas gaiva has nothing to do with the sensory pleasure.
Exactly. It's something you're taught.
Like,
maybe you're taught, you have a natural disposition to it, be close to have a natural disposition to everything. But you're taught in the sense of it's a social, it's a cultural. COVID is a cultural institution, right? If you're like a critical theory person, you said it doesn't really exist, right? Only literal pleasures might exist, even that's culturally construed, because they get into that level of that. But we're trying to make it simple, right? But it's a how do they call it? How do they call it?
Paradox?
Not a paradox, a constructed thing, right? Something that doesn't live in your body in the same way that food lives in your body. As simple as that. It lives in the relationship between me and you. Does that have some representation in my body, my brain? Not my question. But it doesn't live in my body in the same way.
Is the same, like, let's say COVID.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
You have to be taught. And liking it is not a reduction of one to the other. It's not that now I just like it like in the same way I like food. I like it in a different way. Now, you could say that all of these kinds of likes are still selfish and bad. We're not getting into that question. That's the Chassidish criticism, the Platonic criticism. Plato already had that criticism. But that's not my point. It's still more that it's a different kind of thing. And people seem to be missing this. Because it just, in other words, that if there's no value, like no value, it's not different. It's not different at all. Like some people like pizza and some people like torah. That doesn't really follow. It's true. But it's a different kind of thing. To be able to like pizza is a simple thing. To be able to like torah, you need training. You need chinuch. This is important. It's socially constructed, okay?
And if taste needs chinuch also, then it would be the same?
There's other differences. It's a different thing. I just told you one difference between them. It's a different thing. Even food, there wouldn't be this. It's still a different thing. We're just trying to define why it's a different thing. No, I said one chilek. I didn't say this is what made the difference. It's obviously a different thing. It's just, I don't think I need to explain you why it's a different thing. It's a kind of, what do you mean? It's a different thing. It's like a sense feeling is a kind of thing. You understand what that means? A pleasure of the sense is a kind of thing. You understand what that means? And sense of liking to it is a different kind of thing. You don't feel it in the same place. Just want to say that, right? It doesn't exist in the same part of the soul, right?
How to because one is an activity and one is liking the actual item. That they could come out in examples where it's not an activity, correct?
No, absolutely not. This is just a nice fantasy that people like to tell themselves. I don't know where people got this. You literally don't feel the same. I don't know why. Look in your experience, okay? You could look and do introspection for this. This is totally not the same thing, okay?
Yeah, it doesn't hit my taste buds. It's some other.
Very nice.
It's no other sense.
So it's not the same the same thing. Why do people go around? People have just invented this category called liking things, and then like you like torah, I like pizza. That's true in a very broad sense if you like to use the word like in an undifferentiated way. But it's like saying this is a table and that's a star. Both are things. Very nice, but this is a table, that's a star. It's two different things.
So why should I?
There's nothing to do. I didn't say that you should care. I just said first that it's a different thing.
Fine.
I didn't say anything about caring. I'm just trying to tell you the most basic fact that it's different, and for some reason, I don't know why, or I do know why. Because it's basic. If it's something else is basic, you're messed up.
No, I mean this for real. I'm actually thinking the way like you usually teach to think, but I don't see why the taste bud, because it's a tongue and a piece of something hits it.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Like,
we know what that is, and we know what this is. They're not the same thing. Why is the yellow marker different than the blue marker? I don't know, because one is yellow, one is blue. What is the question?
It's also different, right?
Of course, those are different. Very nice. But they're the same. Okay.
I can like a taste.
No, they're the same kind of thing, right? We have this.
Why did they say kind of thing?
Did you ever figure out this category called senses? Do you know what a sense is?
Oh, so you decided there's 5 senses?
I decided.
Yes. And that's it. It can be another.
Again. We have to be very. No, there's not more than 5. But we have to be real in this sense. Maybe in a different sense. And we have to be real. Right? It's not a chachma to just go and take words. This is sophistry, right? Let's take words and pretend we can make them all sound the same. They're not the same. There's no reason. Like it's the opposite. If someone wants to claim that they're the same, they have to prove it. The normal way of thinking is that there's not the same. It's not the same kind of thing. I don't know what. Like, tell me what you even mean when you say the same kind of thing.
When you hear
I have no clue what you're saying. No, it's not. It's absolutely not.
It's not the same as what?
It's not the same as feeling something in my mind, as feeling something in my tongue. What are you telling me?
Oh, so one second. So the other sense called hearing is also not the same as taste.
Again, when you say music, just to be clear, no, because you made me complicated examples. I'll tell you why. Because we can't. People always like escaping to complicated examples. Because music is not a pleasure for the ear. If you say something very simple, like the kind of music that babies like, then yes. But if you talk about appreciating music, that's something.
I'm not appreciating. I'm talking about what babies like.
Then of course it's just a pleasurable sound. It's not simple that there's such a thing. But assuming that there's such a thing, yeah, of course. So very loud sounds hurts you, and a nice pleasant sound likes you. That's the same exact kind of thing. Of course, it's a kind of. I could even give you some definition for what a sense means, but why would I have to go there? Like I feel like it's something we all know. And I think that the other thing, I'm telling you this, I'm making this argument, okay? I think that the other thing, this assumption that it's the same kind of thing to like a shtickle toisfis, is something that nobody knows. It's a shtickle philosophy that makes no sense, that you were told by someone and you decided that it's basic, and it's nonsense. Just think of it for 1 second and see that it's nonsense.
No, I'm trying to figure out when you say.
I'll tell
you this. Ich verstehe so viel. Wenn ich esse Popcorn, habe ich es lieb, wenn ich nehme Toys, habe ich es auch.
No, you don't know that. You actually don't know that. No, it's not a mitzvah. This I'm telling you. It's brainwashing by a kotzkechus that told you this.
It's brainwashing. I'm telling you mitzvah.
I know you're not. Adi, you have to come to me. Whenever I say something that's not a mitzvah, ich weiß es nicht. Okay? No. I'm doing a shortcut because I don't have a good. I'm doing a shortcut. I'm doing a shortcut because I don't have to be mechalik. You're the one that's connecting two things just to have the same word. It makes totally no sense that you kept nish around like it's no shaykhs, and for some reason you're pretending that it's me that has to prove you that it's different. It's so funny. It's no shaykhs, these two things. Amish don't even get you. Actually, your other question was a better question. What is the shaykhs between enjoying a touch and enjoying a taste? That's a good question. There's actually pretty easy ways of answering it, why they're similar. But what you're saying is something totally different. It's just that we use the same word like for both, or enjoy for both, which is very not accurate because it's not the same kind of enjoyment. It's the same kind just in the sense that you know, like in the same similar, like I sometimes make these funny things, like my chair likes to be on the floor. Oath likes, it never jumps up by itself, so I must like it. And that's the same kind of thing as me liking pizza. It's just a word that we use the same, but it's just sophistry. There's nothing this same word refers to in your experience or in anything that you're making them pretend to be the same thing. I have no idea why anyone would say this.
I use the mushal of hearing for a very simple reason, okay? Because you said that hearing is one of the 5 senses, and that has type of enjoyment, right? So then you said, no, I'm using a complicated mushal. I wasn't using a complicated mushal. I'm trying to tell you a mushal that hearing has pleasure from, right?
Very good.
So that you understand that hearing's pleasure and touch pleasure is different, even though they're from the 5 senses. So too, the brain.
Tadek, did you listen to what I said, or you just was thinking of what you're going to answer? Because I just repeated this question that you said to you a minute ago.
No, you said about the difference between touch and taste. And I specifically said hearing. No, it's
right?
No, because I think I specifically gave you the
Do you understand why we came up with this concept of 5 senses? What do we mean when we say senses?
I have an example of not the 5 senses. What about hearing a joke? Now, I'm not talking about the physical feeling of laughing after you hear the joke. When you hear a joke,
that's like appreciating music.
It's like music, but music is one of the 5 senses.
And that's like understanding touch.
Yeah, that's not hearing. It's not a pleasure of the ear. Of course not. No, of course not. It's a social thing. I don't know what. Yeah, of course.
It's a social thing? What
of course.
If no one's around?
Of course.
I like hearing.
That's not social. By social, I don't mean if no one's around. I mean it's something you're taught. It's a cultural thing. Of course, in different cultures like different jokes. Okay, that's not entirely a proof, but in some sense, yeah, of course.
The same exact as
of course.
Liking the.
Yeah, of course. It's not the same kind of thing as liking a shtickle as the pleasure of senses. Of course not. I didn't convince you that anything better or anything. I'm just telling you that it's different. We just use this word feel good for everything. We just use this word feel good for everything as if we know what that is, but we don't know what that is. We know what feeling good means in a sensory sense. We also know what it means in a different sense, but it's not the same thing. I have no idea why you keep on pretending it's the same thing. It's just the same word. It's not even. You should use a different word, and you'll see that it's not the same thing. I could call it differently. Let's decide to call it differently, and then I'll be right, right?
What's the difference? Days habe ich lieb, days habe ich lieb. Or the days habe ich pleasure for
again.
Why are you saying saying that it's different?
I'm not hooked. I'm hooked on you being so never brainwashed, and you're repeating words to me that mean nothing. Because only let's make a new language. Yitzchok Lowy made a new law. We're not allowed to call these things enjoyment. We have to call one enjoyment and one plenjoyment. Okay? Now you understand that's 2 different things, right? This I enjoy and this I plenjoy.
Can I give a good example?
Finish. Did I solve your problem? Now give me something besides for the words to tell me why I said something wrong.
Let's say liking to drink. Talking about alcohol. Liking to get drunk, right? It's a perfect example for you. You can't. You have to make a distinction between of why, not why you like to drink, but meaning you can't bring taste into the matter, right? Because it's disgusting, right? no, sensory wise, right? Like it's nothing to do with the good taste, it's right? Separate. It's the social aspect of it, right? So I like to drink. I'd like to.
I don't think Ada disagrees that it's different. He disagrees that therefore we should say that it's different. I don't know why.
I think he's saying that
it's the opposite. If you want to connect things, you have to connect them.
Within learning, he's saying you have sensory.
I don't think you have both things.
That's you saying.
I don't know which sense enjoys learning.
Saying, by the way. That is what I'm saying.
I don't know which sense enjoys learning. If you want to tell me which one it is, or in which sense it's a sense, so why would you even call it a sense?
I don't know where it is, but I know for sure that I like it.
Very cute. I'm asking that you like it, but you're just because senses have a meaning. It's not just a word that we made up. A sense has a meaning, Tzaddik.
Then I don't know where it is.
When we call it senses, it's not because we're randomly decided to call these things senses.
No, but if you say there's 5 senses, then you're taking away from other things that have the same feeling.
They're not.
You could call it senses, but they're not senses because they're not.
Okay, a sense is something that gives me information about the outside world, in a way of touch, or in a kind of way analogous to touch. Yes.
With sight is touch?
Yeah, kind of touch. Everyone, of course.
That's what you always say about touch.
The ancient theory was for sure like that, but nowadays it's also like that. It's just the light wave is hitting your cornea or whatever. Yeah, of course. That's what a sense is. There might actually be more than these 5, but it's hard to find them. Not like there's many more.
And this is not touching your brain or touching your whatever?
Not in the same way. Like again, in an analogous way, yeah, we have these analogies. Like ein lechem ele torah, but not it's just an analogy. It's the same word for a different thing. I don't see why I have to explain to you that it's different, because it's obviously different. It's you that has to explain to you why it's similar. I can explain to you why it's analogous, but I can't. I don't know why you would assume that's the same thing. And just to be clear, I'm not saying didn't make any moral claims here, right? I didn't say that it's a better kind of pleasure. I just said it's different kind of thing that happens to get called feeling good in the same way, but it's a totally different thing. It's the same thing, okay? Let me tell you clearly. The people seem to be very confused about this. I don't know why. I know why, because like brainwashed by a bunch of hundreds of years of philosophers that tried to pretend that this is the basic facts, but it's not. The enjoyment of being married is not the same thing as the enjoyment of having sex. And some people think that it is, but it's not. It's that both enjoyable, both are pleasurable, but the word pleasure literally means something else in both cases, okay? Naches, in Yiddish is called naches. Gaat naches meine Kinder. Was meint naches? Basically selbe Sache wie enjoying some sex, Nein, es hat kein Scheiches. There's some Chassidisches word that make the argument, but it's nonsense. It's maybe they're both selfish. I didn't say that one is better than the other or any of that. All I said is that it's a qualitatively different thing. It's like saying, you're telling me the floor and the ceiling are both the same. Yeah, they have some similarity, but they're two different things. Like, why would you even connect them? Okay, let's get back to this thing. I'm going to finish my sheet. So now, the important thing about this kind of thing is that you have to be taught. Okay, you have to be taught. It's not natural. There's actually very few things that are really natural, or at least this distinction is more complicated. But at least in some simplification level, sensory pleasures don't have to be taught to humans. But other pleasures or other likes, we shouldn't use the word pleasure because it confuses us, but of course that is pleasurable, have to be trained. Okay? And that's what Shlomo HaMelech said, and Plato said, that if you don't train people, they will never like it. There is no way to make you like without training. We did this right last week. I don't know, I did it in my Yiddish sheet. Right? You have to be trained. And this also means that both, even if I could give you an argument for why it's good, which would be a different discussion, it wouldn't be enough. Because you still won't like it. If I give you an argument for why it is good, you're going to agree that it's good, but you're not going to like it. In the same way which you like food, just for the different way that we're talking about here, right? And vice versa. If I don't give you the argument why Torah is good, I can still make you like it. Maybe slightly less successfully, but I can still do it. You know how I know that it can be done? Because many people have been doing it all the time. And like with yeshiva, they don't really explain to you why Torah is good. They just tell you should believe it. But they do make you like it, at least in some cases. And it's even works very well. They even make you like it in the ways that they would not agree with, right? Because people that went to the yeshiva like also learning other things that the yeshiva doesn't approve of, which just shows you that this is like a kind of thing that you could buy, you could be trained into, liking, learning, and it doesn't translate into liking, following what the yeshiva says. It's not the same thing. That's how you get into it, maybe, but that's not what you get. What you get. Just like it's a kind of shlelishma, right? It's a kind of way of getting you into it. Makes sense? Makes sense? Now, just to be very clear, every single culture that ever existed does this. Besides for a few that pretend that chinuch is not necessary, but they also do it. They just don't talk about it, right? Belonging to a culture literally means this. That's what it means. That's what culture means. This word culture, which, by the way, tarbut is literally what Chazal called culture, and tarbut means chinuch. Tarbus means being raised, right? The raising of people, not the raising of people in the way of raising animals, right? In the way of raising people, which means teaching them some more human, right? Obviously, animals don't literally have midas, at least not to the extent that we do. And this is something that at least starts to define us as human. And when you grow up, you are taught to like certain things and dislike certain things. That is not very much connected with the beliefs of this society or with the...
Dislike is also the virtue, same thing?
Yeah. Okay, the word virtue is weird, but the kind of thing that a virtue is. Virtue just means the good ones. That's why it's a daya without being a midah, right? Without being a midah, yeah, of course. This is what culture does. And this is why culture, and even to some extent, this leads to some scary conclusions for us, which were said, already drawn by the Mishle and by Plato and by Aristotle, that the kind of things that you start doing when you're a child, they are going to determine your whole life, basically. Right? Whatever you are trained to do as a child, in a childish way, will remain with you for the rest of your life. Which is why if you go to a Chassidish school, if they teach you to respect the rabbis, you can always respect the rabbis. It might be a different rabbi, but that's a midah. No, I'm serious. Like a minas chacham is a midah. It's a midah. Or if you go to literature school, which teaches you to be critical in some sense, you're going to remain with this midah, and so on.
Some switch, it's like an anomaly?
Wait. We're going to figure out how to switch. I don't think people entirely switch. People refine. Very, very few people entirely switch. Actually, maybe none, or maybe very few. But very few people entirely switch, and I don't think that's what we need to be doing. What we need to be, but let's get to that in a second. But this I said before my question of what's okay. Now, when someone says I'm happy to be, if I am happy to have received the Torah, and like we gave in the first half hour drusha that we don't mean the Torah that's in the banner. So the only thing it could mean is that I am happy with certain virtues that I was made to have, certain things that I was made to like. It's not that I choose to like, right? This is even something that's weird to talk about choice. The choice is, it's a choice, but in a much broader sense than what we think about choices, like I choose to this action or that action. You can't literally sit down and choose to like learning. You could choose to get into a path that will cause you to that. You could choose to train your children to do that. It's a much broader thing than individual, particular action choice. But if you received a training, you received a chinuch that made you like certain things and dislike certain things, and those things are good. Now we'll have some way of evaluating whether they're good. But if you realize them to be good, then you should be happy with receiving the Torah. If anyone says different kavanah, you should tell me, because this seems to be the only kavanah that's possible to have. That your culture that you were brought up in, known as Yiddishkeit, if that was the culture you were brought up in, has given you certain likes that you would not have had otherwise. It's not possible to get them otherwise. There is nobody that gets them without being trained in them, without being cultured and educated into them. And like I said, we have to talk about Shiva. What do you do when you're stuck as an adult? But we're talking about, when we talk about being happy with the Torah, we're not, just by the way, very clear, right? We're not talking about, I said last time, right? Again, people like to go to the extreme cases for some reason, right? When I ask you a question, are you happy with hello? When I ask you the question, are you happy with having received the Torah? I don't mean, hello, I don't mean the question of would you have taken the Torah if you would have been about Shiva or something, you would have been born differently, which many people think that's the question. I don't know why that would be the question. That's a nice. Yes. For some reason, this is another one of the ways in which people switch the question to a different one, which is either harder or easier to talk about, right? If I before I asked this question I said that we should all think of if we're happy to have received the Torah. And for some reason, people think that this question translates to a different question, which is, if I would have been born in Honolulu, would I have been misguided?
That's changing your whole knowledge.
It's entirely, besides for that not being a realistic question, it's also not the question that I asked you. When I asked you if you're happy, I mean the one that you have actually, not a different one that you would have theoretically had. Why do people keep on changing it to that one? I don't know. I actually know, but you should think about it. And since the question is on this actual one that you were given, and given doesn't mean there's a book that you believe in. Given means you were trained into, because that's what chinuch means. Therefore, the question is if the values, not the values, if the virtues that you were trained in are good. Now, to the extent that they're good, you should be happy. To the extent that they're not good, you should do tshiva. It's very simple. And what does refining them mean? That it's probably very hard to think of a society that has zero virtues, or that has no virtues at all, because that would be impossibility. And since everyone has some virtues, then the job of growing up or of doing tshiva, which is what we do when we're more than 15 and so on, and we can't relive our childhood, not only childhood, right? Youth. Then the answer is you need to know what those virtues are, and you need to know what the good parts of them are, what the good things that you were taught to like that you would never have liked otherwise. And then you find out what the bad things are. What are the bad things that you were taught to like and you would never liked otherwise? And what you would have to do is, this is like the work of philosophy or the work of tshiva, like of the work of growing up. It's to make the good ones interpret the bad ones instead of vice versa.
Interpret what?
What does that mean?
The ones wants the bad ones.
Now if the devil tell you the answer also. The answer, yeah, I could tell you one example, but I have to finish. The answer would be something like, I was brought up to let's do something like this, right? This is really what all the middas are about, the midam tzuos. And the midam tzuos shows you that there isn't really such a thing as a entirely bad thing. The only question of when and where and how much, right? So, for example, if someone was brought up in some kind of society, some community which taught him to not care about what anyone else says, right? Okay, this is a virtue that you get from growing up in Lakewood. I'll tell you about it. Okay? We are the best, we talked about this, we are the ones that know the truth, and everyone else can verstecken. Yeah? One of the basic virtues, just very clear, we escape to the truth of it when we talk about it. But this is a virtue, this is a kind of way of being. We like it. We like to be the ones that know what they have to do, and we absolutely don't give a gunish, see what anyone else thinks. Right? That's a virtue. It's an excellence. It's a thing that you get, okay? What?
Whether it's good or bad, it's a virtue.
Okay, I don't have a different word. It's a way of thinking. Now this has a too much, which is bad, and a too little, which is bad also. And which virtue is this? This is something like the virtue of courage. Okay, I'm giving you an interpretation of this. This is what I mean. Now there's a bad interpretation of it, which is called the vice of egoism. Okay, which is not caring about other people. That's how you become a bad Talmud of Lakewood. But the way to become a good Talmud is to interpret as the virtue of courage, which is the idea that you, as a human being, needs to have some sense of what he is doing and not be the opposite of that, which would be the vice of being a choynef, right? Someone that just does what everyone else wants them to do, which is not good, not for himself and not for anyone else, right? You need to have that kind of. I'm calling it courage. Maybe there's a different word for it. I'm not sure if it's exactly courage, because courage has more to do with facing danger and stuff. But some kind of virtue of having a backbone. Okay, integrity.
Sense of self?
Integrity. You could call this. We'll figure out. You understand more or less what I mean. Some kind of integrity, right? I don't know. I'm trying to use ancient words. So some kind of integrity or courage or backbone. Okay. Now that's the good interpretation of it, and you understand it in that way and use it in that way. And there's no way of applying virtues without using your seichel, which is called phronesis, practical wisdom. And you imply it in the cases or in the way or in the amount which it's needed for that, and not in the amount which is needed to be a gasriach like some other people apply it. That's called becoming a mensch when you're already an adult. That's called, and then you have a right to say that you're happy to receive the Torah. Right? Otherwise, you don't have the right, because it only made you worse.
So it still didn't have to be this Torah?
I didn't answer that question.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to stop here. You can think about it yourself. Didn't have to be nothing.